this one is the best carp flies, I think it's called. Jay Zimmerman, I believe, is the author of the book, and it's a fly called the Carp Dragon, which again uses the same yarn. I actually found the other fly through trying to find yarn for the Carp Dragon, and through online searches I happened to find the worm fly as well, which I thought was quite good for bass, so we'll see. So Carp Dragon, this hook is a Gamakatsu SL45 bonefish hook in a size 4. I think the pattern calls for a Daiichi hook, but I got these from a local tackle shop for $4 for a dozen, so they're not bad. They're still a bit pricey, but they're not terrible. Start the thread about the middle. We don't really need a thread base on this guy. Work with about 2 inches of this, and I'm going to strip a bunch of it off and save the fluff, because you'll need this later. So there you can see 4 strands in the middle of this yarn. So we're tied in about the middle of the hook. The butt's extending to but not past the eye. And again on one side of the hook. And I'm going to wrap back to about the start of the bend. You can go back maybe about as far as the barb. And you're going to wrap down some of the yarn, and that's okay. For the tail, unlike some of them where you leave a long tail or seal it off and have a bit of fluff, this one you fold it over so you get that nice bulky body that dragonfly nymphs have, and you only want to do about a ½ an inch or so. So shape this back a bit so I'm not tying down too much of the material. Tie that down, and again I'm going to pull most of the fluff out of that because I'm going to save that for later in the fly. So I'm just going to come back to about there. Lose most of that and clean it up a bit. This stage I'll tie in my foam for the back. This is just brown, olivey brown craft foam. So tie on a length. I'm probably going to cut off a bit of that, but I haven't measured out the exact length of the foam if you're asking for it. When you're tying foam in, give it a crimp first. Squeeze it down. If you just start tying your thread on foam that hasn't been pressed down, you're going to wind up cutting through it. So once you get your initial tie down in, you can put some firm thread wraps down, that's okay. And this I'm going to take back to where I stopped my yarn. It's about there. And I'm going to tie it forward to the 1/16 of an inch or so back from the hook eye. Give me some room to tie off later. Eyes on this guy are black mono. Now, a lot of carp flies you'd normally use black bead chain, dumbbell eyes. But on this guy, this is a mid-water carp pattern. So it's made for, or it's designed to be fished when carp are sort of actively cruising and feeding, not necessarily stuck mudding around in the bottom. If they are and they start tossing up the bottom, they'll get other fish that'll come in. Smallmouth bass will come in behind them, or other carp. So you could throw this around carp that are rooting around the bottom, but typically it's sort of fished mid-water column, left and like slowly crawled or slowly stripped through the water column while carp are on the cruise. So we don't need weight, hence the mono eyes. Mono or plastic bead chain. These are plastic bead chain. And they're on top of the hook shank again because the weight doesn't matter. They're not going to flip it over. Get those guys in. And then we shall do legs. Doing 3 lengths of silly legs or round rubber legs. The pattern calls for round rubber. I kind of like the silly legs. They've got more color, a bit more movement than the round rubber. The round rubber also tends to dry out and crack and fall off, and then you have a legless fly. So silly legs, get them in pads like that from, fly shops are going to hate me, Bass Pro Shop sale, somewhere like that. You can get a whole whack of them in a bag for $3-4. All the bass guys use them to make their own skirts for spinnerbaits and jigs. Fly shops are going to sell half of what you get from like Bass Pro Shop for twice the price usually. So you can cheap out a little bit on materials and get them there. I'm just going to trap this under the thread and have them cross the hook shank. Move the thread forward. I'll do 3, like I said, I'm going to do 3 lengths, so we have 6 legs, because everyone knows fish can count how many legs a fly has.
Absolutely.
Eyeballs, legs, toes, everything. Get 2, move the thread 1 more turn, do my 3rd one. I find how I'm tying these in, I'm coming up in between the thread and the hook shank as opposed to putting it down and tightening it down on top. I can position it better, and I don't find that they go too... If you just tie it down initially with a thread wrap, I find that it crimps the material too much, and then you have a hard time keeping them positioned, keeping a bit of space with them. If they want to go back a little bit, that's okay. I need to start the thread over again because I missed a step. Needed to, yeah, I know. Need to have a dubbing loop at the back of the fly because I'm going to need to dub the rest of the body. I'm sorry, but forgot that step. Just walk my thread back up through all the legs. Sorry, David, you've got some editing to do.
If you hadn't told us.
I know. Could have just finished it off and been done with it. No, it's going to look horrible at that point. So,
Maybe that's it is, then it shows your coverage.
there you go. Or lack thereof. So, dubbing loop. All the yarn that I stripped off earlier, I'm just going to sit and blend together. And then lay it in a bit of a stack and tuck it in my dubbing loop. So, and you'll have a lot of it come out, but that's okay. Just pick out all the extra loose stuff and save that because we'll use that later too.
Scottish fly.
Hackle pliers. And just going to wrap it forward, feed it in between my legs here. This stuff makes great dubbing. If it wasn't so hard to get a hold of, I'd love to just take some, throw it in a coffee grinder, and make up some.
So would you ordinarily put the dubbing on first and then the legs afterwards?
Well, no, you'd do the dubbing loop first
Yeah,
before you tied the legs in.
okay.
We'll tie the tail, the foam, then the dubbing loop, and then put your legs in, advance your thread up to this point, and then dub the body. So at this point, for extra movement, extra legs, I've just got part of an olive schlappen feather. You only need a couple turns, so one feather will do you for several flies. I'm just tying this. I've left, it's a bit tough to see because again this yarn is pretty bulky, but I've left some space between the dub body, or I've gone back and flattened down some of the dubbing from the legs to the eye, to the eyes, because we need a bit of space for the hackle and to be able to tie down the foam at the back here as well. So I'll get that down. Oh. Give it a fold, and again, like I said, I'm only going to do maybe 2 turns. See how it looks. Yeah, 2 is going to be all right. Not too worried about getting fibers trapped down because whatever sticks out at odd angles I will trim or pull away later on. Just get all that back, and I'm going to run my thread over it just a little bit just to keep it all sloped back, and again to give me some space for the foam. So split these down the middle off to the sides so I've got a clear path for the foam. Pull it across the back. Again, crimp it down with your thumbnail first before when you go to put the first wrap in there. It just compresses the foam a bit and helps to keep it from cutting on you. Gonna make a bit of a collar just to move the thread up a bit, or move the foam up a bit rather. Come back, and then you're going to, with your thumbnail, push that back. So I've pushed those thread wraps that I've used to tie the foam down. I'm pushing the foam back over it with my thumbnail. And I'm going to put a couple thread wraps on there to keep the foam there. Why I do that?
Sean, is that between your thumbnail and the foam, or between the foam and the rest of the fly? And thread, those last couple of thread wraps?
The last ones are right there
In front.
in front of the foam. I've crimped the foam back with my thumbnail.
Yeah. And so the thread went between your thumbnail and the foam?
Yeah. And that's just, you can get a segmented back on the fly without, I'll clean up some of the junk I left in here, without having a big gap of thread there. So, again, the fluff off of the yarn from earlier. I'm going to dub and make a bit of a bushy head. You don't need dubbing wax, it helps. Certain 9 fly a night fly tire despises dubbing wax, but that's okay. I like it. It makes things easier. Sometimes. This stuff is pretty thick and unruly, so the wax does help. And give a nice big bulky head, and you can see you get that yarn wrap that gives a real nice buggy mottled green and brown color. And the foam is going to pull over the eyes, and again pinch it down with my thumbnail before I put the first couple of wraps in there. And when you go to cut the foam off, don't just snip it off and then have to try and deal with all the extra crap. Put the blade of your scissors in behind, pull the foam tight, and then snip. And you get a lot less waste that you have to try and hide with your thread. Myself a thread head and tie it off. This makes a real bulky, buggy dragonfly nymph. I see a lot of patterns that are too slim. Some of the species of dragonflies, and don't ask me what they are because I don't remember. Some of them are really long in the body, and then some of them have a really short body and great big long legs. Their body is really short and round and kind of built like a tank, and then they have these great big huge long spindly legs. And then some of them are long and thin, so I guess this is kind of a mix between the two of them. It's a little of both. But yeah, it would be great for bass. Again, like I said, it is carp fly, but there's no reason why largemouth and smallmouth bass wouldn't eat that. It's a bit large for panfish. Some larger perch would definitely get their mouths around the hook, and I'm sure some large crappie might as well.
I know some bluegills.
I know some bluegills that would give it a go for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be good more in shallows, warmer water, still water, not so much in moving water. You don't get a lot of dragonflies in the main part of a stream. I guess like a slow pool or a slow shallow back eddy would work, but definitely more of a still water fly. So I will pass that guy around.
What length of leader do you fish that on, Sean?
If you're fishing for carp, you'd be using a longer leader. If you're fishing it for bass aren't leader shy, as you know. You probably get away with a a shorter, like a 7 foot leader. Carp, they're pretty spooky. You'd want to go fairly long and thin. Well, not thin, but like fluorocarbon for sure. Bass, plain old 10-pound mono, shouldn't be a problem.